Hello, another week. Right, let's start in the United States of America with an easy little chart. And let's not beat about a bush. The big one, sticky uppy, is tuition. Maybe it's a bubble. And to give you an idea, that's homes in red. That's the housing boom and bust. And tuition just goes on and on. And the CPI just does its regular thing. That is one hell of a zooming up. I hope everyone knows what they're doing when it comes to that tuition thing. In the New York Times there was an article on Apple and the President Obama and his relationship with Apple. Apple has become one of the best known, most admired and most imitated companies on earth, in part through an unrelenting mastery of global operations. Last year it earned over $400,000 in profit per employee, more than Goldman Sachs, ExxonMobil or Google. So let's just pull out a couple more paragraphs to pad that out a bit. Apple employs 43,000 people in the United States and 20,000 overseas. A small fraction of the over 400,000 American workers at General Motors in the 1950s, or hundreds of thousands at General Electric in the 80s. Many more people work for Apple's contractors, and this is obviously the line here. An additional 700,000 people engineer, build and assemble iPads, iPhones and Apple's other products. But almost none of them work in the United States. Instead, they work for foreign companies in Asia, Europe and elsewhere, at factories that almost all electronic designers rely upon to build their wares. Apple's just another example of why it's so hard to create middle-class jobs in the US now, said Jared Bernstein, who until last year was an economic advisor at the White House. If it, Apple, is the pinnacle of capitalism, we should be worried. The fall of Detroit. The most recent census showed that in the decade from 2000 to 2010, Detroit lost an astonishing 25% of its population. This makes Detroit still the 18th largest city in the United States at a population of just over 700,000. The decline in population is only half the problem. The other half resides in their $12.3 billion of outstanding debt, along with well over $5 billion in promised benefits and unfunded pensions. The people are leaving, but the debt liabilities are staying. There will be default. It's just a matter of time. This chart going back to 2000, mapping that last decade and the last 2 years as well, is the brilliant work of the Federal Reserve. They are tasked with keeping prices stable, and as you can see, the blue core PPI, which is obviously X food and energy, has been wrapped around that 2% target that they set themselves. So at least somebody is hitting their targets in the United States. This is on the SNAP program, food stamps. One reason why SNAP is serving more working families is that for a growing share of the nation's workers, having a job has not been enough to keep them out of poverty. And that red line is the rising up from 1990 of the amount of working families that are also on food stamps. It's a kind of subsidy by the government for paying poor wages. Going out into the real world now, as in outside America. The leaders of the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank and the World Trade Organization on Friday issued a warning about the economic and social risks of austerity programs in a call to action designed to boost growth and fight protectionism. expressing concerns about the weakness of economic activity and rising unemployment. The IMF's Christine Lagarde, the World Bank's Robert Zoellick, and WTO's Pascal Lamy joined the heads of 8 other multilateral regional institutions in calling for policies to create jobs, tackle inequality, and green the global economy. Yes, they're getting there. The world faces significant and urgent challenges that weigh heavily on the prospects for future growth and on cohesion of our societies, said the statement by the Global Issues Group of the World Economic Forum. It was published ahead of the forum's annual meeting in Davos next week, amid concerns that 2012 will see the global economy flirt with recession as a result of the Eurozone crisis. Blame those poxy Europeans, and they've got a lot to be blamed for. We'll go there, but we'll go via Egypt, who've had their election now. Mubarak out. The army held control until the people could have elections, and the elections have fallen thus. According to the final results of the staggered election issued by the High Elections Committee on Saturday, the Brotherhood's electoral alliance that's the Muslim Brotherhood, took 38% share of the seats allocated to lists. The hardline Islamist Al-Nur party, that's Salafi, they're much more Muslim fundamentalist than the Brotherhood. Won 29% of the list seats. The Liberal New Wafd and Egyptian Bloc coalition came third and fourth respectively. The Revolution Continues coalition, the young people that spend their nights out in tents getting beaten up by the army. The Revolution Continues coalition, dominated by youth groups at the forefront of the protests that toppled Mubarak, attracted less than 1 million votes and took just 7 of the 498 seats up for grabs in the lower house. Yeah. Ramifications. 2 last things on Europe. Barnier urges Cameron and City to play the game. Jouer le jeu. David Cameron and the City of London must learn to play the game, play the European game, and give up seeking UK exemptions that would hurt the economy and endanger open trade, the European Union's top financial regulator will warn on Monday. That's today. In a speech in the City, Michel Barnier, the EU Commissioner for the Single Market, will vehemently deny that he is presiding over a plot to damage the city and drive business to financial centres on the continent. Lastly, Europe Financial Times, all today. Paris and Berlin seek to dilute bank rules. France and Germany are to call for relaxation of global bank capital rules to prevent lending to the real economy being choked off, setting them at odds with the UK's stricter approach to banks. So much politics and so many bad things going on behind them. Have a good week. Bye.